that's the dream, though. Music, it can be anything, you know. Mm-hmm. It's a hobby, it's a career, it's background noise. It's, you know, it's why we do it, right? It fills so many spaces in your brain or in your life.
Hello and welcome to Where the Living Room Used to Be, a podcast about Rhode Island's music scene. Hey everyone, it's James. Aaron Jaehnig joins me on this episode for a great conversation about his experience working at the Living Room, some key lessons he learned from Randy Hien, the start of the Parlour and what it was like for him to end his time there, and some of the bands he's played in over the years. This was definitely a fun interview and one that's been in the works for a bit, so I'm super happy I was able to connect with Aaron and help share the news of his latest venture at Wes Rib House as well. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a rating and review wherever you're listening right now. And make sure to subscribe, as I'll be releasing some bonus episodes with Aaron over the coming weeks. Thanks.
I definitely remember music being part of my household, but, you know, when I was young, you know, everybody just listened to Michael Jackson and Twisted Sister and Weird Al or whatever.
Yeah, like the stuff that was on the radio.
Yeah. You know, and then Metallica and all that nonsense that came out in the 80s. But there's a couple, like, moments in particular. I was telling somebody else this story. One of the most important musical memories, I remember being at I was in 7th grade at a Our Lady of Mercy Catholic Regional School roller skating party.
Okay.
You know, and like the standard hits, you know, the Final Countdown was playing, or like, you know, some Hall & Oates jam, and everybody was having a great time. But there was this one kid, this 8th grader, who, like, he had on a like Vision fanny pack, or like some like skate brand. Yeah. He had on some like skatewear and like this wild floppy haircut, and he was rolling around this roller skating party with a Walkman headset on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why would you go to a place where there's like all of this loud, great music going on and listen to something else? Like, it was like something that really blew my mind at the time. So I went over and I said, Ray, like, what are you listening to, man?
Yeah.
And I remember so distinctly him pulling the cassette tape cover to They Might Be Giants Lincoln out of his pocket.
Okay.
And he's like, dude, this is the greatest record that's ever been made to this point in 1989.
Yeah.
You got to listen to it, dude.
Uh-huh.
And so I remember, like, him handing me his Walkman headphones and listening to that opening track, Anna Eng it is, I think. It definitely is. And just being like, I had never heard anything like it, you know what I mean? And it was just one of those moments where you're like, holy cow, there's like a whole other, like, this is definitely not a Europe song.
Yeah, like there's music that's happening that isn't on the radio or isn't on in paper or magazines or whatever. You know,
I remember that, like, I got, you know, that was 35 years ago or something, and it's like, it's such a distinct memory of like opening my mind to thinking about music that you couldn't hear other places. I remember being at a friend's cookout too once. He was this total, you know, mohawk, combat boots, the whole nine. Like, my friend's cousin, we went to his family cookout, and his like older cool cousin was like, everyone's outside doing cookout stuff, and his cousin's just in his room listening to music. And I was like, it's like, you know, what is this guy listening to?
Yeah.
Like, it's a beautiful summer day. We're eating hamburgers, dude, and you're in your room in the dark listening to music. And the same thing. I remember going and asking him, like, what are you listening to, dude? And he had the 7 Seconds Walk Together, Rock Together record.
Yeah, okay.
And that 99 Red Balloons thing, he put it in, and it was like another moment of like, I know that song, but this is like a whole different world that kind of like just made me realize, at 12 years old, like, oh, all right, so there's this weird alternative rock stuff, but there's also, punk rock is also something cool, and those are the two moments that really kind of started me just thinking about music differently. Mm-hmm. I remember both of those moments so clearly.
And where did that take you? Did you start playing music, or what was your...
A little bit, like any suburban adolescent that doesn't have a real picture of how the world works. Yeah, like my friend Jim got a guitar, and I would have like some drum pads, or like not even a drum set, you know what I mean?
Okay,
and we would just bang on stuff in the basement, and he actually is a pretty amazing songwriter. Even then, he was pretty good, and it we would record it, and like I remember recording, like it was literally like me playing the floor and him on acoustic guitar and three people trying to sing harmony, and we like at 12 years old, we sent that in to apply for the WBRU Rock Hunt or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like, you hear the ad, like, local bands, please send in your tapes. And we were like, I can't imagine, like, if anyone ever listened to that tape, like, what they thought about it.
Yeah.
It was playing music, but then also, I remember...
and where was this? Like, where did you grow up?
Potawatomi, which is that weird section of Warwick that's not connected to the rest of Warwick, between East Greenwich and North Kingstown, like down by Goddard Park.
Okay.
It's a weird Warwick is connected by the bay.
Yeah.
Not even,
all right.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. But actually, I ended up, the first band I ever played in was with that dude Jim, and
what band was that?
It was called, and I had never even seen this movie, but I read in Rolling Stone about John Doe and Adam Horovitz from the Beastie Boys.
Okay.
Were in this like motorcycle buddy film, and like my local Blockbuster Video didn't have the movie.
Yeah.
But in my mind, it was the coolest movie of all time.
Yeah.
It was called Roadside Prophets. I don't know if you've ever seen that flick.
I've never heard of it.
It's a fantastic movie. But it's this really bizarre, like, motorcycle buddy film. They end up going cross country. They meet Arlo Guthrie, and I don't know. It's a pretty wild movie.
Yeah, so it has like a bunch of music folks in it.
Yeah, oh yeah. Cool. I hadn't seen it till I never ended up seeing it till much later. But we named it. It was a cool band name.
Yeah,
especially for like a movie that I convinced myself was amazing.
Yeah,
even though I'd never seen it.
Yeah.
But it was the same thing. We were so bad. The first time we played live at the Tollgate Follies talent show in 1993, we were so bad for the Saturday night show that our drummer didn't show up for the Sunday matinee show. He was just like too embarrassed. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just gave up on that.
Yeah, he just didn't show up.
And what were you playing in that band?
I was playing bass.
You were playing bass, okay.
Yeah, and it was pretty funny, though, because then the kid who was playing keys ended up playing drums the next day, and we just stuck our friend Jay behind the keyboards, and he just stood there, and he got a lot of compliments after the show about...
just kind of like air keyboarding?
Yeah, and I don't think he even did anything. He just stood there, But, yeah, I played with those guys for a long time, and honestly, that without... one of the other guys in that band's name was also Aaron. He lives out west now, but without him, I don't know if I would have ever taken this trajectory the way we did, because my relationship and my band's relationship with Randy at the Living Room was initiated largely, we were 16, 17 years old trying to, get gigs in Providence or whatever. But as we got old, I guess Aaron started working at the Kinko's on Thayer Street.
Okay, yep.
And so in 1994, Kinko's was having an inn at Kinko's to get cheap flyers. And, obviously this is not even the MySpace generation yet.
Yeah.
Never mind whatever other ways we promote music today, but flyers were gold.
Yeah. Yeah, Kinko's was one of the most important businesses that weren't tied to music, but was so tied to music. Right. There's all these stories of musicians that worked there, and
So we got gigs we had no business getting because Randy could get cheap flyers from Aaron at Kinko's.
Oh, really?
For the living room.
Yeah.
So he was just like, he was appreciative, and whatever else. I mean, yeah, and we weren't bad, but we certainly, the night before Thanksgiving, there was a band back then, Wet Stew. I don't know if you remember these guys.
I think I've heard that.
They were pretty big on like the hippie and jam scene and all that stuff. They'd put 700-800 people in the living room the night before Thanksgiving around
wow.
that. And, based almost entirely on the fact that Randy didn't have to pay for flyers to promote all his other nights. He would put us on shows like that. So,
wow.
And that allowed me to, develop a relationship with him and with the club that probably wouldn't have developed naturally if we were just like untalented alt folk kids in the mid-90s.
That were playing every couple of months or whatever.
Right.
The normal thing. You just had a deeper connection with them.
Right. Yeah. Basically just over the flyers.
Yeah.
The Kinko's hook up.
Thanks, Kinko's.
But that, right. So that, that relationship with Randy in the living room changed my life. You know what I mean? I can't even think.
Because at that time, it was the, what living room was it? Was that the second one?
No, that was the second living room closed in 1989.
Oh, it was 89. Okay, yeah. And then it was 90.
Or early 90.
95, right?
And we opened, Randy reopened over there on Rathbone Street across from the Coca-Cola factory. Yeah. That was 94, 95.
Yeah, okay. All right, yeah.
So I would beg my parents. I remember Ice-T's Body Count was one of the shows, definitely Ramones shows. I would beg my parents to let me go to shows at the living room in the early... in the late 80s, and I never pulled it off. They never would let me go.
Oh, no?
So I never made it to the Big Bubble, the infamous room, but every generation idolizes the part they got to live. So, but I think we did some pretty cool stuff at that. You talk to some old timers, the third living room, that wasn't even really a thing. I was like, well, it's because you never came. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, there was plenty of stuff going on there.
Yeah, can you talk more about that? So obviously you built that relationship with Randy. Like, how did you end up working there? And then what are some of the memorable times there?
Sure. Oh, memorable times. That's we don't have that long. But.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So we just kept playing there all through that. Those guys that I was playing with, Aaron and Jim, in our just little alt folk trio. We had like a residency at the 193 Coffee House at URI, and we played. Yeah. We were playing living room, AS220, whatever. But those two guys were taking music pretty serious. They still have some. You can check out what they're up to now. They have a band. They've released a couple. Jim lives in Minnesota. Aaron lives in California, but they actually record. They still put out full records. They record together virtually and send each other tracks. It's called the Ampersands.
Oh, okay.
Pretty cool, like apples in stereo, kind of like.
Oh, okay.
Poppy.
That's cool.
Interesting poppy stuff. Yeah, they're still doing cool music. But those guys were taking their music serious, and I was at that point at URI not taking anything serious. So they kicked me out of that band.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. But still wanted to be involved in live music and whatever else. I hooked up with my friend Mike, and we just started trying to manage bands and book shows and stuff. And there was a band at URI back then called the Lula that we were managing them, and we started booking them pretty regular at the living room. Mm-hmm. And we were bringing in some other bands and putting on some nights here and there. And I forget exactly how it all panned out, but Randy just offered us Wednesday nights.
He said, just as a steady thing.
He said, "Hey, do you guys want to book Wednesday nights at the living room? You have to pay the sound guy $60 a night and do the door yourself.
Yeah,
I'll provide a bartender. And you guys book the bands and do whatever you want.
Yeah,
with the door is." You guys cover the sound man, who at that point that was August of '99. I think we started doing that. Sound man was making $60 a night, so as long as we could get $60 through the door, pay the sound guy, and obviously, so we started booking every Wednesday night at the living room,
Wow.
That went on for a few years. But in that time, as we were there every week and doing stuff, and I get what he's doing, I do the same thing. It's honestly one of the biggest lessons I learned from Randy is when we're jumping ahead in time here, but after his first car accident, this is years later, and he sort of was going to back out of actively running the club as he was rehabilitating from that, and he had just had some kids, got remarried, all this other stuff. When he handed me the control of the booking calendar at the living room, and we spent an afternoon in training.
Yeah,
it was, he said,
I know you've been doing it, but
he said, you know what I do? I've done for a living for the last 30 years. I throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. You know what I mean? And so the biggest example at that time, because even during the lean times, before Mike D and the folks from the old Met got involved and started bringing in national acts to the living room, there was some tough times going on over there. Just the thing that kept that place open was the Tuesday night energy techno night.
Yeah.
Which had sort of started with a couple of DJs and their friends, 15, 20 people in a room every Tuesday for years before all of a sudden there were 500-600 kids showing up every Tuesday for that night. So I think in Randy's mind saw that maybe this jam band scene, which is largely what Mike and I were booking at that time, jazz and funk and jam band stuff, as maybe the next thing that would go from a couple of hippies hanging out in a room to maybe, a few hundred hippies hanging out in a room. So he did the same thing. He gave us those Wednesday nights, and now I'm there every week. I'm hanging out with the staff. I remember Eric Paul from Arab on Radar, who did the door there quite a bit, and specifically did the door every Friday night. Eric was going on tour and quit working at the living room. Mm-hmm. And Randy, this is it. You want Friday nights? And now, from that moment on, I worked there for 10 years, pretty much.
Wow. Yeah.
3, 5, 7 nights a week.
Yeah. And was it the type of place you were hanging out when you weren't working, or?
Yes and no. Yeah. I mean, depending on what was going on. And at one point, so when I was still working a day job, managing a group home at that time, and working a couple, 2, 3 nights at the living room, and then Randy got in that first car accident, and then, it turned into now I'm working a full-time day job and working 6, 7 nights at the living room.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
My 20, that was 2003. Mm-hmm. In my young 20s, decided to give up the social work career and go with the nightclub career. Seemed a little more interesting. I mean, it still does, but it was kind of a no-brainer at that time. I couldn't work 2 full-time jobs, so it was that was it. Never looked back.
Yeah. Was it like a comfortable thing, or how did you feel managing all that stuff? Or once, like finishing that story of after your afternoon of training, having this club and filling a calendar and, like what was that? What was that like? Was it exciting? Was it?
Oh yeah.
Stressful?
I mean, it was actually
everything.
It was all of those things for sure. But, I remember as a teenager, I don't even know if this was, I guess it was probably Lollapalooza I didn't go to that first Lollapalooza, but the second one, what was that, 91 or 92? I don't know. Yeah. Ministry and Ice Cube. Anyway, I after that, I would I had notebooks full of festivals and show lineups, and this was before I ever had booked a show in my life. But my brain was just I want to put music together. I want to curate events. It was just I would just sit on my floor in my bedroom and listen to music and dream of oh man, this show would be amazing. Imagine if this lineup was a thing. Or I'd put imaginary 3-day festivals on paper in I don't know. It was just one of those things cool. I did as a 13-year-old kid or whatever. You know what I mean? But so it was sort of the same thing, and at that time,
were a lot of people reaching out for you at that time?
I mean, it was the living room, at that time, the phone was ringing off the hook, and like I mentioned, when not the original Met, but the Met Cafe that was on Union Street, connected to the old Lupo's.
Yeah.
When that shut down, there was sort of a deficit for that Lupo's crew, who were, still putting the big national acts in Lupo's, but didn't have, the people on the way up or the people on the way down.
Yeah.
Kind of, they lost a spot to do that. So Mike D started bringing all that stuff, all those touring acts into the living room, and and the phone was ringing off the hook for local shows. So, we just it would fill in that, like I think back, I have some of those calendars.
And how many bands were you doing each night?
Well, it was a whole different, live music happened in such a different way.
Yeah.
Back then. I mean, most of these shows on a Friday, Saturday night, you had 5-6 bands, metal bands, punk bands, all doing, all bringing in their all gear. There was no like sharing equipment. You'd have 5-6 drum kits, 5 or 6 like full guitar and bass setups. I mean, it just switching over band. It was. So we would do that.
I look at now is what you're saying.
Well, no, it's just that's what you
more efficient.
The overhead. I mean, it was a big space. You know what I mean? So in order to get enough people in there to cover who you needed to pay to run the business, and also get enough money through the door to pay the bands. Yeah, you needed 5 or 6 bands most nights to generate the amount of people that could make anybody any money. It was but that model doesn't really work anymore. It doesn't exist anymore. It's hard. I mean, having run another, it was, obviously the Parlour was a lot smaller than the living room, but to run a place only as a music venue, it's really hard. I mean, in order to generate enough revenue to pay the bands and pay your staff and keep your space. I mean, I give those folks a lot of credit. It's not easy work, but I have those calendars. We were booking live music. I mean, some years, 330 nights a year, the living room would be open with live music. And that was the other lesson I learned from Randy. Then we had an all ages license. Yeah. Monday nights, Wednesday nights. And he always said, sure, this is a 14, 15-year-old kid playing for his mom and his girlfriend or whatever, and it doesn't always sound great, or, it's not always, but, you develop that love for music and for playing out and being in a band. When kids get to experience that at 14, 15, 16 years old, not only are they going to be loyal to you or interested in being a part of the scene that you're building, they're going to turn 18, they're going to turn 21, they're going to be friends of the living room for life. You know what I mean? It was, and not that it was like a scheme or a business model. It was just like, this is the way you have to regenerate what happens here, because for most people, unfortunately, playing music is a hobby. You know what I mean? It's really hard to make it a career. So you got people that are fired up about it, but they're not all going to be able to do it forever, and you need to foster the people coming up behind that. And that was something that ran, so we ran live music 7 nights a week, most weeks, you know what I mean? Sunday night, Monday night, Wednesday night, you're putting 5 bands full of teenagers a lot of times out there, and just, it wasn't always fun, or it didn't always sound great, but it was important.
No, yeah, that's amazing, and that's just cool to hear that about Randy, and just the understanding and foresight that he had for that,
And he had to do it because, I mean, he was the same way. He was a dreamer. He had plenty of opportunities to do things other than, I think he ended up giving up his house. He lost his house in the process of opening and keeping open that third living room, at a time where things weren't going well. He had this tiny apartment above a barbershop on Branch Avenue, you know what I mean?
Wow,
At one point early on in that third living room where, a lot of people in their 40s, with the son in college or whatever else was going on at that time, you get to that point where it comes down to your house or the music, and Randy chose the music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, and his history is just amazing. Anyway, from managing P-PAC and then opening the first living room downtown.
Yep.
it was just, he always said, and I'm sure you had Gregory on, so I'm sure we always quote the same stuff. But Randy had his things that he would never let you forget. But to him, musicians were like the purest form of dreamer. He called them the last dreamers in the world, because everybody, doesn't matter. You're that kid at 15 on the stage playing to your mom and your girlfriend. That's not what you see or feel when you're looking out. You're on that stage with the sound guy and that huge PA, and you're going through the music that you guys have been practicing 3 times a week for the last 6 months. I mean, you're dreaming of being on the stage at Lollapalooza or on a world tour or in the bus or whatever that your particular vision of what doing music for a living would be. Randy saw that feeling, that like pure, just like dream of being a musician. He just had such an appreciation for like what, and as someone who wasn't a musician himself, to be able to see that and appreciate it and foster it and build it for this city the way he did, it was pretty special. We were lucky. And I was lucky to be part of it. I don't, obviously he had been through a devastating car wreck, got hit head on by a drunk driver leaving. It was a Mushroom Head, that metal band Mushroom Head.
No.
They were part of that like grime. They wore weird masks. And played really sludgy, fast metal stuff. Anyway, we had like a sold out show and Randy was leaving the club. Somebody was coming up the 610 connector from downtown the wrong direction, whatever. Oh yeah. But anyway, for him to come out of that and, hand me the calendar, it was like, it was the key to the castle. It was something that was my dream. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is, I was in my early 20s and like had this little book that I was just writing down on bands are calling. We got 5 bands. We want to play Friday night. Well, we can bring this man. All right. Yeah. Cool. Let's go. Let's do it. Yeah. There was, this is a time too where it's still like State of Corruption and Shed and, all those bands were still kicking and packing the place once a month. A lot of that, the old punk dudes. I mean, there was a good scene, but there were some lean times too. So it was, I learned it all. You know what I mean? It was, all the lessons were learned.
Yeah.
In that building.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, at the end, and I don't want to get into the real ugly bits, but I mean, Gregory and I were taking money out of our pockets and going to buy booze to stay open the next night and paying ourselves back at the end of the night to make sure that we could like, it got real wild at the very end after Randy passed and things got a little crazy. But that was all we knew, you know what I mean?
And you were doing what you could in that time,
We were dreaming of the Parlour. It took us just, the living room shut in 89. It took Randy 5 years to get another one open. The living room closed in October 2008. It took Gregory and I till October 2012 to come up with another way to keep getting to listen to live music every night.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, can you talk about that? That transition and the opening of the Parlour, and which the spot was the Penalty Box prior to that. Can you talk a little bit more about that experience of opening that together with Gregory and your other partner and stuff?
Yeah, it was sort of at the end of the living room. Wasn't a surprise, but it was also sudden, if that makes any sense. We had sort of been looking at possibilities of how to keep it going and exploring other spaces and to move the living room to, and that kind of kept falling through. But the plan coming out of that was always, Gregory and I had spent so much time night to night in the trenches keeping that place going. And it was a no-brainer. Like, obviously, what do we do next? We find a spot. We figure out a way to open our own spot, Yeah. And, obviously it ebbed and flowed. We'd talk about it. We'd look. We'd not talk about it for a while. You'd come up empty a few times. And then we had Rob from the time capsule and various other ventures, who was a huge part of being able to finally get it done. To help Gregory and I overcome some of the financial burdens that we couldn't have on our own. So, it was just really, the penalty box was up for sale. We had a deal worked out. It fell apart. And 9 months later, they came back and offered it to us again. And, that was a no-brainer, and at the time, there was an old studio in Pawtucket, Rick and the guys from Six Finger Satellite had built, I guess, sometime around Nirvana. They sent a real Nirvana-y. This is the story anyway. Like, this is how the legend has trickled down. I don't know entirely how accurate it is.
Well, it's going into a podcast now.
Yeah, right.
So it's going to be true.
The way I always heard it is, Six Finger Satellite, who, one of my all-time favorite Providence bands, sent Sub Pop a real Nirvana-y demo and got signed to Sub Pop. In that craze, and they took all that the whatever money they got from Sub Pop, and they built this studio in Pawtucket, and then made completely non-Nirvana-y music for the following 10 years. And thank God, because those records are amazing. But anyway, Rob and I, before we opened the Parlour, had actually taken over that studio. And it was called the Parlour. They called it the Parlour. It had always been called the Parlour. So I guess I'm just answering questions you never asked now. But anyway.
I was going to bring that up. The precursor to that was, the studio piece of it. So.
Well, it was all just sort of a natural trend. It's like, well, what do we call this bar we're going to open? It's like, well, the Parlour, the living room. We have this thing called the Parlour. We had this thing called the living room. And we ended up shutting down the studio around the time we opened the bar, so it was like, sort of a natural transition. The Parlour, it's sort of, as much as it's an extension of the living room, it's sort of also an extension of that studio space. We brought some of the gear over, and we're hoping to bring some of that energy that existed in that room in Pawtucket with us too.
Because who were some of the people you worked with? Like Weak Teeth recorded there, right? I remember. Yeah, so who were there?
I think...
you remember that came through there?
We did the Northern Lands record there.
Yeah.
We did the Girl Haggard record there. We did... B. Dolan ended up coming through. Eventually, Dan...
Sawyer, right?
Dan Sawyer, yeah. Sort of got involved through Jared Paul. They did the Prayers for Atheists record there. Okay. And through that relationship with Jared and Dan, ended up, B. Dolan did some recording there. I think he brought the whole, Cheer Brigade in there at one point to do a track.
Beating like a drum, can't take the whole feeling. They're beating on his blood, can't get out. Too much doubt to overcome, too much loss. Shut the door, cut him off. No cure but to batten down the hatches. But when the night falls, there's a storm in the mattress, and the ship gets blasted by the wind and downpour. No map, no captain, no order, no course, no path towards morning. A witness to the end, another victim of life, a prisoner in his bed. Caught up at the border of the living and the dead. Caught up at the border of the living and the dead. Caught up at the border of the living and the dead. Caught up at the border of the living and the dead. Caught up at the border of the living and the dead. Can't get to sleep, so the dream never ends. We can't get to sleep, so the dream never ends. Caught up at the border of the living and the living and the dead.
Opening the Parlour, having your own spot after all of that, like what was it? Was it like the first show was, Thanksgiving Eve 2012 with Northern Lands and Jay Burnt and the Orphans?
Was that the first show?
That's what the internet said.
Yeah, we had a soft opening, I guess, sometime right around Halloween. Yeah, I don't...
So, it looks like you had opened prior, but that was like
I'm trying to remember now if that was like if there were other events that had happened in that tween time, but man, Jay Burnt was that band was fantastic at that time.
Northern Lands was pretty good too.
We had fun.
Yeah, we'll get to that too. But yeah. To those that don't know, listening, Aaron was in Northern Lands, so that's what the inside joke was.
No, that band, that was, from getting kicked out of playing with my high school friends band while we were in college to like, how serious and fun still, but serious working with Josh and those guys in Northern Lands was, and, driving to Boston and New York all the time to do stuff, which at that point I had never really been in bands that took life that seriously, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Girl Haggard lasted for a long time and played a lot of places, but not in I don't know, it just felt different. Northern Lands felt different. Girl Haggard was fun. We were just, getting drunk and playing silly country songs, but really fast.
Yeah.
But Northern Lands was different.
Yeah, Josh is serious and is a pro, and I mean, what he's doing now is.
I pretty much forced him to let me play in that band because it was right after the. I forget where I was. I might have been at Firehouse 13 at that time, and I left. I don't know, but I had taken a job driving a truck for this fertilizer company. You get laid off in the winter.
Yeah.
And so I had nothing to do. I was maybe bartending at Talk of the Town a night or two. And I was laid off all winter. And I went to, what's that place? The bar on the water where the guy from Dropkick Murphys owned it for a while, but now it's Fishco.
Yeah, Fishco.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Josh and Pete, the guitar player, and the other Josh, the drummer, were playing the show at Fishco without a bass player. And so I pretty much just kind of forced my way into the band. I said, listen, dude. And then honestly, we spent that whole winter, Pete was laid off landscaper. Josh was taking music serious. I was laid off for the winter. There's some basement in the West End. We just stayed there all winter and just played music like 3, 4, 5 hours a day. Some days like 3 or 4 times a week. Sometimes I don't know that was the most serious and like diligent I had ever been about playing music, and it was a fun time.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I mean, I knew that it seemed like the band. I thought it was more of just because of the history. Josh had played in other bands and such as yourself, Girl Haggard, and just your history in booking. But it seemed, like once the Northern Lands came out as a band, the name of the bands, like it was like you're playing BRU spring, or summer concerts. You're, playing a bunch of other like opening sets. You're just traveling a lot and stuff.
Yeah, it was awesome. We deservedly lost the WBRU Rock On to Roz Raskin and the Rice Cakes. So
yeah,
I'll take runner up to Roz any day.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, with the Parlour, I mean, however much you want to talk about it, but what I guess even just answering, like, was it cool? Like that first night you're opening, and you had those dreams for years. And like,
finally do it for yourself.
To do it and or lock up that night and be like, oh, this is my place. This is our place. Like.
Yeah, it's all such a blur now. As much as I do have like some really clear musical moments in my brain, the Parlour was such a blur to get that play. I think people were walking through the front door for the soft opening while Brian, our friend Brian, was still painting the logo above the door. Like the paint was still wet. He might have still been on the ladder, and people were walking underneath to come in and get drinks.
Yeah.
We had just got our liquor license, and it was all a blur, and then it was, but it was the same thing. I mean, it was a struggle, well, is this a neighborhood bar? Is this a music venue? Can we sell food? Can this, it always turns out a little different than maybe what you thought it was going to be originally. We did everything we could to try to entice like we're going to open at 3:00 because that's when the shift change is at Miriam Hospital. And then maybe all these people, but smartly and rightfully so, people drive back to their home and go to their neighborhood bar rather than get drunk in Providence and then drive home. So, that never really materialized. And, you start throwing stuff against the wall and see what sticks. The sea shanty band shows up and says, all right, listen, I want to do these family-friendly sea shanty sing-along nights. And you go, really? Why would you want to do that?
Yeah.
But, yeah, let's give it a shot. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, that's like your busiest night of the month is when, all of the adults who don't go to live music events anymore because they have children show up with their children at 6:00 on a Friday and put 100 and something people in the place for a sea shanty sing-along night. You know what I mean? And that's the beauty of it. You never really know what's going to work or what's going to, and then we did that. That night is still going. It's 11, 12 years later almost. Mm-hmm. They still do that once a month on a Friday night. You know what I mean? We did a little bit of everything. It was, that reggae night's been going for 12 years. There's the open mics had some different iterations, but it's still one of the best ones in the city. It's weird, to be completely frank, to like now have something. The thing, for a long time after I left the Parlour, it's incredibly difficult to think about anything, to think about life. Like, what does life look like after you did the thing you always wanted to do? Mm-hmm. It took me a long time to figure out what do you do? I got to do the thing I dreamed of doing. Like Gregory and I opened the place we always wanted to open and did it every night for 10 years, or 9 years, however long I was there. But, what comes after that was a really hard question for me to answer day to day for a long time. Mm-hmm. But, that's where actually, and now here we are.
Yeah.
I finally have an answer. It took me 5 years, I guess. I don't even remember what your original question was. I got distracted by my emotions.
Just your experience at the Parlour and what it was like with that,
But so I guess it is hard now a little bit. I mean, hopefully it'll get less hard because I have something to really sink my heart into again. But, it's hard. It's hard to have something that you created and something you built and something that you always dreamed of being a part of exist outside of you. Mm-hmm. That's a weird thing. I am ecstatic that it still exists, and I hope Gregory can keep it going for all eternity. It's an amazing place, but it's still weird to process, like driving down more North Main Street, going to Sandwich Hut. It's like, man, I'd spend every day in that building for 10 years. And now, like, it's still the same thing it was, but I'm not in that building anymore, At least when the living room ended, they put it to rubble, you don't really. Those emotions are different, I guess.
Yeah.
Because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to book shows every night. I wanted to listen to music every night. I wanted to provide that space for other people to do that too, Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, it just, that room is not big enough, was not big enough. Gregory and I both have families, mm-hmm. It just couldn't support both of us, mm-hmm. So c'est la vie.
Yeah. You're currently at Union Station Brewery, general manager there, and do some of the booking as well. And
I try to let Mike D handle that.
Oh, does he handle? Okay.
Well, I mean, not that I don't. I mean, I'm happy to book bands. It's just that. Mike D doesn't really need any help,
I mean? he's done it a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So going in there, then that was sort of part of the transition for me to but it's been a really, I was a food and beverage manager in the casino doing at Union Station. It's, you get into things not necessarily like, what am I doing and why am I doing this? And mm-hmm. now here I am,
here at Wes's
5 years later. And it's like, oh wait, these I'm in the place that's perfect again, and I actually somehow managed to trip over all the skills I'm going to need to be able to pull this off.
Yeah.
So, because if I hadn't spent that time at Union or at the casinos or just being more of like a restaurant or food and beverage manager, it's much different than just flying by the seat of your pants in a music venue from night to night.
Or strictly being a bartender or strictly any of those things. Like there's a lot of different stuff of overseeing the operations. Yeah. So.
And now that we have all of those operations happening under one roof, it's like, all right, well, maybe this path actually kind of made sense. Somehow,
That's cool. I love that. I love when those things just make sense. They just kind of, come together. Yeah, I mean, but getting back to some of the music stuff, just wanted to touch on Girl Haggard just because they're, you mentioned that it was just a big part. You played in it for a long time. Could you just talk a little bit about that band? And I recently saw a music video that you were in, the Sharks Come Cruising, Patty and the Whale video, and I saw like Girl Haggard had won some gold records, or I don't know yet. But anyway, check out that video. It's fantastic. Aaron's in it. It's super fun.
Yeah. The Sharks still talk to me after I berated them for quite some time at the beginning of the video.
Yeah. And do you have a wardrobe of trucker hats that matched your Western shirts, or is that
no?
That's for the movie magic of
it. Yeah, exactly. I felt a little weird saying it too because I was like,
"It's a perfect line."
No, I know, but the humor of it was not lost on me when I thought of it. But I'm wearing that Slim Cessna Auto Club hat, and I'm like, I hope Slim Cessna never sees this because I freaking love Slim.
He's awesome. Yeah.
I don't want him to take this joke the wrong way. I have a feeling he might appreciate it, though.
Probably, yeah.
No, I think that's the only band hat I actually. Oh no, I have a Darkbuster hat somewhere in my closet too.
You got a Mallet Brothers one.
Oh, that's true. I did. That's
them.
right. I did just get that. That's.
But anyway, Girl Haggard. Can you talk about?
I'd rather talk about Darkbuster.
You want to talk about?
Those were some of the best shows at the Living Room, man. Let me tell you.
Oh really? Yeah, I mean they're incredible band. I mean they were big up in Worcester too. Like when they were coming up, it was. Because they're from Boston, right?
Yeah.
But just still, like
Lenny was the real deal, man. I mean, he lived it. He wrote about it. He sang about it. It was, sometimes you see a punk band and you're like, all right, your costume is nice and the songs are okay. Mm-hmm. But like that was, Lenny was the real deal. You know what I mean? That was Boston working class life, just like exploding on stage for 40 minutes straight. It was those shows at the Living Room were some of my favorite, and there were some good ones.
Yeah, that's cool.
But I would, they'd come every 4 or 5 months, and it was like always the best night of the month. No, Girl Haggard. I don't want to not talk about Girl. It was it was a time where I was a little bit lost. The Living Room closed. I took a job bartending at Talk of the Town. I was booking some shows at Firehouse 13 for a little while. I don't know if you remember what was that club on Westminster Street? Briefly, it was just called like the 201.
The 201.
201.
Yeah. Yep.
I was doing the door there, trying to piece together what the heck, while Gregory and I were taking our long path towards the Parlour, doing this and that. And it was like, it was a little bit like you spend every night for 9 years in the living room and are so tied emotionally and to that. When that ended, it was like being able to just start a band with some really good friends and write silly songs and practice a couple nights a week and dump a bunch of Jim Beam nips into our high lifes and shoot the shit. You know what I mean? It was like, it was the perfect time. It was the perfect band for that time in my life. I mean, we had a blast. After the original guitar player left to play music with Adam Thoreau, who like is one of the greatest, nicest, funniest people in the world. But it was also just like, I don't know if you remember Biennial Ham Sandwich.
No.
And he was like the mascot of the living room, or he had this like somewhere between Weird Al and Wesley Willis, with maybe a little like There was quality songwriting in there too, like Daniel Johnston. It was like all the quirkiest, weird, silly, fun music stuff you could ever think of.
Yeah.
And I would always love it. You call the living room answering machine and be like, tonight at the living room we have Hitler Stole My Potato with Biennial Ham Sandwich. There were some great band names back then. Pickle Spill, Aisle 6. But anyway, Adam had this sort of comedy rock thing, and honestly, I would throw him on the weirdest shows because it fit nowhere, so really it fit everywhere. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
Especially if I had like, oh my God, this is like this brutally annoying. The people in this band suck. Their music's not that great. But, you book bands. The living room stage was open. But there's some bands that you didn't always look forward to. It was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put Biennial Ham Sandwich on this show. It's going to make my life so much happier.
Just even thinking of what is this shitty band's experience going to be watching this?
Yeah, right. Well, that too.
And just being like, why are these? What is going on here? And you're like, yes.
Oh yeah. He had this sidekick named Monstrosito. I mean, saying it out loud all these years later, it's pretty wild stuff. Which was basically just another kid with a sheet over his head and like a toenail painted on the front, and he would just stand there while Adam played the keyboard. And it's Grand Buffet. You remember Grand Buffet?
Yeah.
It was I mean, they were doing the hip hop version of it, but it was it was just silly and fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, Adam he's an amazing guitar player. Without Andy, he played in. There was other bands along the way, but we lost our guitar player 2 days before a show, and I was like, I called up Adam, and it was just, hey, can you learn 8 songs in 20 minutes? And he was like, yeah, no problem. And I think he thought he was just probably filling in. But he ended up playing with us for another 2 or 3 years, or however long that band went on for. It was a while.
Yeah.
But, and that's it. Like, that band we played great shows. We did the Rock Hunt with that band. We, did a lot of shows with Sasquatch and other.
Yeah.
Open for the Super Suckers, and there was cool. But honestly, that band was more just about hanging out with Hunter and Mandy and Adam and having a couple of beers and shooting the shit and playing some music along the way. I've very sporadically been a musician. I've never, I even hesitate to call myself a musician because, I've gone years without even touching an instrument sometimes after, we had a band called the River Bottom Nightmare Band sometime in the early 2000s. And then Brandon, actually, who's going to be smoking all the brisket here, I joined the Hillbilly Graham Crackers for a while, but all of these projects have years of time where I'm not really playing any music in between them, and then somehow you always come back to it when you need it. At least that's how playing music has been for me. And the Swamp Birds now too. That's actually the perfect fit. Sometimes we barely get around to practicing because Jen made soup and we have a couple of glasses of wine. And and it's like, oh wait, well, we have it's only a few shows a year, but it's cool. I get to hang out with JJ and Kate and Brian and Jen. Let's also make some music, but
And you just connect with them just from being friends and like that's the same sort of thing of like they needed a bass player?
Yeah, it was, I think at some point, I don't know, Jen and I have also been mixed up in some of the same activism and environmental circles and stuff. And I don't know what we were talking about, or it was like, yeah, we don't really have a bass player. And, you know, sometimes I think Steve Donovan was filling in and helping him out when he could, but he's got so much stuff going on. I was like, you know, I was like, well, you know, if I can do it, I'd be happy to help. And then it just sort of turned into, cool, I hope Jen's making soup. I want to go there every Tuesday. You know, whatever it is. It's just, it's more about being around good people sometimes than it is, you know, about making music. But making music's, you know, also pretty fun. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good place to be. I love hearing that and can identify just how the stuff can, like the priorities of music and, I mean, getting back to what Randy said of definitely is true for me of what those dreams were, but they've just evolved over time. And, and you know, my dreams are just more of the having like deeper connections to the people that are around me. And that comes through music and playing music and, you know, but yeah, it's different. Like the being on a bus for 200 days a year and all that other kind of stuff is,
which always sounds great. But,
for me, that this isn't, you know, my interview, but yeah, like when I actually went on tour, I was like, oh, this is fun, but this is not what MTV showed me, you know? You know, so.
Yeah. No, and that, I mean, and that's right. That's the dream though. Music, it can be anything, you know, it's a hobby, it's a career, it's background noise, it's, you know, it's why we do it, right? It can it fills so many spaces in your brain or in your life. Honestly, my son is so interested and eager in hearing new music. Like I play DJ for one person at night at bedtime, and it's like the most fun. I get to relive, like, what do I want to show Henry today? You know what I mean?
That's cool.
And he is such a captive. It's like, all right, you like beats? This is DJ Shadow. And then this is, you know, but where did he get that beat? You know what I mean? Let's go, you know. Then we're listening to Miles Davis, and then, you know, it's like, you end up, all right, we're going to learn about Lucero today.
Yeah.
But really, maybe we should go back and listen to the Highwaymen or I Love It first, you know. And he just like, oh, man. And I just get to play DJ, and we both fall asleep on the...
That's really cool.
Yeah. That's actually, those are my favorite music moments right now, but hopefully we'll build some new ones here.
Yeah. You know, that actually kind of leads me to this question that I ask at the end of every interview. What has been your greatest musical accomplishment to this point?
I mean, I guess I've never really considered music to be an accomplishment, you know what I mean? And like, I'm not necessarily trying to get anywhere. Like, you know, let's just have the thing, you know? I don't know. I mean, obviously, like I said, you know, putting 300 plus nights of music on a year at the living room is like, that was a dream come true. And to be able to keep Randy's dream alive, like after he was injured and then after he passed away, you know, and there was a whole generation of people. I'm old because nobody says this to me anymore, but, you know, I would be in Maine or somewhere in Florida one time, maybe in an airport in Chicago. Are you the door guy at the living room? No, I swear to God.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because some kid was in a touring band, or like, oh, yeah, dude, I drove down for that Eye on Fire show. That was like the greatest show I've ever seen. You were the door guy at the living room. You know what I mean? It was like, there was a whole generation of people all around New England, at least, that was like, you know, I was literally walking in York Beach, Maine, into like this beachside movie theater, and the kid selling the tickets is like, oh yeah, man, you're the door guy at the living room, you know. to be a part of that legacy is obviously I'm incredibly proud of that, to build what Gregory's been able to keep going at the Parlour. I guess, and I haven't lived in another town in a long time, so it's hard to always make accurate comparisons, but it feels like just being part of what this arts and music scene in Providence is, and to watch it maintain itself so interestingly and creatively, and also change so much over the time I've been a part of it, just to be able to be a part of that and, watch it all happen. Because really, at the end of the day, the guy booking the shows I'm not really doing the work. That's the part I love. It's fun for me. Like, let's plug this in here and these bands together. Like, oh man, you guys would be so good if you played with these guys. Like, that's fun for me, but I'm not really doing the work. It's kind of I guess it doesn't feel like an accomplishment necessarily, because it's like, honestly, I'm taking the easy way out. I don't want to have to practice my instrument or get really good at this.
Things,
Yeah, try to find time to be in a band. I just want to be around it. You know what I mean? Like, it's, I just want to see what y'all can do from night to night. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I've never really considered it a personal accomplishment, but it sure has been fun to be a part of it all,
Yeah.
And people don't even remember the BRU Rock Hunt now, but, just like being able to be a part of that stuff. Someday being able to say losing to Roz Raskin that'll be something people will value highly. So, Or, one time, I know you're going to ask me this question in a minute, and I'm going to answer it again. But at the old Liberty Fest on Duke Street, the original Liberty Fest, when they were just Christian and his people over there on Duke Street were running the original pig roast 4th of July party. Mm-hmm. A very young John McCauley played before its time folky jam harmony Southern rock band, the Hillbilly Graham Crackers, which once people found out about, somewhere between that band and the Avett Brothers, nobody gave a crap about that kind of music. You know what I mean? And we were playing it at exactly that time. Anyway, we played right after John McCauley, so I also, I got to have Deer Tick open for me.
Yeah.
That's not really,
that's the accomplishment.
It felt like an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Those are the, man, even John at 17 was playing songs that were blowing your mind.
For real. Yeah, it's actually the same thing. Like when I was playing in Barn Burning, he was going by My Other Face. He played somewhere, I think it was in Attleboro. And it was like, oh shit. Who's this dude?
Right. No, that was it. You show up, it's the 4th of July, you're having a beer, and then you all of a sudden look up and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This kid's freaking good.
Yeah. I guess what comes to mind, though, just out of curiosity, is looking back at those times of the living room, and, yes, it can be, romanticized in some way, but, like what was happening at Babyhead and those like lineups of, like what was in the paper, and you'd see all that stuff, like putting that against like the scene now, like what are your thoughts on that shift of the change in how people consume music and enjoy music and support music and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, looking at those old Babyhead ads, it's like, you don't know how good you had it, right? It's like Friday night, Ben Folds 5. Saturday night is like, HR from Bad Brains. Sunday night is like the 5 best local bands in the city, and and let's just cap it off on Sunday with like, the biggest like modern hardcore band.
Yeah, like Sick of It All with...
Right. I went, dude, that's Sick of It All Madball at Babyhead Sunday afternoons. I must have gone to that show 5 times.
Yeah.
Sick of It All, Madball. Yeah. No, I definitely came up on the hardcore matinees at Babyhead. It's the world is just, I'm going to sound like an old person, which I am. And I'm becoming more and more of one every day. But, which,
back in my day.
Don't get me wrong. Thank God for that. Yeah. Like, I'm happy to keep letting me get old.
Yeah.
you know, the world doesn't consume music and entertainment and stuff, you know. It's the same. People keep asking us here, "Oh, you're still going to be open till 4 a.m.?" It's like, nobody goes out at 4 a.m. and that's just, that world doesn't exist anymore. Like, I mean, we are. I know there's music venues disappearing, but I mean, most cities there's a lot of vacancy in music scenes, you know. And I think we're pretty lucky here still to have the venues and the amount of local bands and the amount of really talented people that we do. But I mean, I don't know. Am I just a elderly curmudgeon or turning into one? Kids just don't go out or start bands or, you know, do arts the way we did arts, which is I know short-sighted and ignorant of how what young people are doing, but it's definitely not, you know. But I had this conversation with somebody a couple of days ago. You know, they said it's crazy that rock and roll is almost obsolete. It's not really a thing. Nobody starts a rock and roll band anymore. Mm-hmm. But you know, I think that we're just a little, you need to kind of wake up or get young or pay a little more attention, because there aren't polka bands anymore either. Or there's, you know, there aren't big band jazz waltz nights, you know. It's music evolves, and that's we can always listen to or make or start a rock and roll band, you know, just like somebody's still making a polka band, but you know, you got to look forward, and it's hard because, you know, yes, going to Babyhead, when I finally got my parents to let me go to a rock and roll show, it was, I think, the fall of 1991. At the Rocky Point Palladium. Oh, nice. Yeah, which for $8, it was the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Smashing Pumpkins, and Pearl Jam. You know, I don't know, to my 14-year-old mind, that was, you can't get stuck thinking that's what has to be forever, right? I mean, that was an amazing thing to be exposed to at 14 years old, and then convincing my mother to drop me off on Richmond Street on a Sunday afternoon in the middle of downtown Providence. My mother would drive me and my friends from the burbs and just let us out in the middle of Richmond Street. Yeah. To go into you know, these hardcore matinees at Babyhead. I don't know. That stuff doesn't seem to exist the way it did 30 years ago, but I don't want to get stuck on thinking that means something bad is happening, right? I mean, you kind of have to look at, so if I'm not seeing what young people are doing to be creative or make music, I'm probably not looking hard enough, because it's got to be there. Happening. Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, and it's I just don't want to get stuck in looking at you know, it sucks. We don't have lineups. I can't open the Phoenix and look at, holy crap, night after night after night, a cool show at Babyhead, night after night after night, a cool show at the living room or whatever. Or, you know, the Lupo's ad used to have 26 shows on it every month, and now it has 4, maybe. You know what I mean? I don't know. The world is consuming arts and music differently. I just hope I can keep up, you know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, I am perfectly nostalgic for it all, and I love being able to be a part of the things I've been able to be a part of. But you know, I don't know. I'm looking forward to finding what's next, what we can fill this room with, and you know, hopefully it can be just as much a part of the community, or whatever people will be nostalgic about 20 years from now. They're remember when Wes's reopened and they started doing music, or you know, whatever the thing is, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, you treat people well, it will be, you know, because those are the things that seem that do kind of stand out. I mean, we didn't really talk about it. I mean, it's not an interview of Randy, but renowned for how he treated bands and home cooked meals and stuff like that. You know, Jake's. Whenever we played there, they treated us so extremely well. Right. You know, playing at Union Station, treat us incredibly well. You know, it's amazing what you do there. So anyway, those are the types of things that can, like how you interact with the bands. Again, like for me personally, Espresso Bar, like Eric was just an incredible person that just gave us a shot and just treated us well and paid us. And the same thing with the Parlour. Like there's never been a time that I played the Parlour and like, there's no money, like there was money, like, I played other places and there's like, so there's no money, like, okay, well, whatever, but, and I don't understand like the business, but it just like the Parlour just treated us well,
right.
And continues to treat people well and allows people to play and to do things, whether it's, sea shanties or, having country bands and bringing in jazz and bringing in this like plethora of stuff and what, started with you. And just looking at the diversity of what happens at the Parlour is pretty, unmatched. But what you can do here at Wes's, I'm certain it's going to be the same, if not better, with just,
well, and that's part of it too,
as well.
Yeah.
So,
well,
those other places didn't have ribs, so
Have you ever had a smoked roast beef North Shore 3-way?
That sounds like dirty, but
it is dirty, but it's like the greatest sandwich of all time. Boston style roast beef with the barbecue sauce and the mayonnaise. But we're gonna do it smoked roast beef.
No, I've never had that. No, but it sounded like something not a sandwich.
Sure.
What is that?
That's why I don't know why they call it that.
Yeah.
Why is it the North Shore 3-way? We'll never know. But if you want one,
come to Wes's.
Well, I've been trying to figure out a way to rehash like those famous old Wes's commercials, but without all like the inappropriate perversion and disrespect to women and things that they filled their ads with in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
But I did just find out that voice actor that like did Bill Clinton and Pee Wee Herman and like all those Wes's Rib House radio ads on it 94 HGY like in the 90s.
Yeah.
That guy is still like a permanent resident of Rhode Island.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I got to figure out how to like use him to sort of recreate that vibe without, saying completely inappropriate things.
Yeah. Yeah. And utilizing some of the nostalgia, but still recognizing the newness of this.
Right.
Because it's new. It's new ownership. It's, But food-wise, are you going back to some of that, like,
it's just classic
recipe stuff? Or, I know you obviously have, like, a new chef that you have coming in here that's managed all that stuff, but are you, like, kind of using that as reference of going back to some of that? Or
yes and no. It's classic family-style barbecue,
Yeah.
Brisket and pulled pork by the pound and, collard greens and waffle fries. And, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, sometimes you look behind the curtain and the nostalgia is maybe not, I don't want to give away any of the previous Wes's secrets or non-secrets or just like adding sugar to store-bought barbecue sauce.
Is that all right?
You know what I mean? I've probably already said too much.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like the food's going to be on point.
Yeah.
And I think that's an unfortunate reality that is going to be difficult because people have so many memories and attachments to like. I'm sure come Thursday when we open, we're going to be telling a lot of people they can't have a piggy platter, which was like one of the main feature items on the Wes's menu for a while. I don't even know what was in the piggy platter. I forget.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is Wes's Rib House, and we have a lot of respect for what Wes and Mike and, Kenny, who was the guy flipping the ribs in the window there for 25 years, is still going to be in the window flipping ribs. Like, there's going to be plenty of authenticity, but it's not to disrespect anything Wes ever did or what they were putting out. It was all good stuff, but I hope, it's going to be hard to get past the expectations that everybody wants it to be exactly what it used to be, because it's kind of like rock and roll. You know what I mean? It can be the same, but it's got to be different. You know what I mean? We gotta move on. So it's not going to be exactly the Westies you're used to, but it's going to be good.
Yeah, nice. And how many nights are you planning to do music as at the onset here?
Like I said, I was kind of slow rolling it and trying to just, fill nights with people that I have relationships with and have been, dealing with for years, and kind of, like I said, Mike D's been doing most of the booking at Union Station. So not that I haven't been paying attention or, unfamiliar with the Providence music scene, but at the same time, it's been a few years since I was filling 300 days a year on a calendar. So, but, with Danielle coming over and getting involved, I think we're going to be able to ramp it up probably a lot sooner than I had originally planned. And it's, like I said, it's not like I wanted to take it slow. I just wanted to build it organically. And there's a lot more organic matter in need of a place to play than there was a few weeks ago. So, I definitely want to make the space available to keep as many shows going in town a night or a month or a week as possible. So, yeah, maybe we were only going to do a couple nights a week at first, but I feel like if people are asking and we can fill the room 4 or 5 nights a week, we're going to do that. And eventually, 6, 7 nights a week, I'd love to do that, So it's really, that's the benefit we have here. We have the restaurant. We have a business plan. We can all get paid every week keeping Wes's going, and we can figure out how this room's going to work as we go, which is a luxury I haven't previously ever had.
No, that's cool.
Trying to do this, but I mean, the way it seems now, we're going to be able to fill the calendar pretty readily. I can't wait.
Nice. This has been cool, Aaron. Appreciate it.
I talked in circles, I think, but we talked about some stuff.
We did, yeah.
I'm at level with the lights on your island made of stone and glass. Let the rhythm of our breathing rise up into the air, and we can share this city skin tonight. We are broken rails, skies by the cloud, you wrap around our skin, and I'm content, waiting on forever, just so you forget. Apart from any song can justify the waves, y'all. Ship was never far from shore. Stand fast and cast your stones into the sea, and I will be back for you. But we are broken rails, skies by the cloud, you wrap around our skin, and I'm content, waiting on forever, just so you forget. Rest well tonight, I hold out the sun for